Amazing. Well, hi everyone. I'm sure some people will filter in as we're going along as well. But thank you all for joining today's session. So today we're going to be talking about comp strategy for Nordic leaders. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Danica. I'm our community manager here at Ravio. So I run our reward room specifically for reward comp HR folks that concentrate on compensation. And for those that are new to Ravio as well, we are a real-time compensation benchmarking platform, basically built to help companies make better pay decisions. So we run a lot of sessions like this, kind of looking different from each other, but what we try to do is run sessions like this to basically help, reward and HR folk on subjects that are very important to them at the moment. And right now, I know that probably a lot of you on the call today are navigating very similar things, whether it's like, tight budgets or harder headcount decisions or pressure to stay competitive without, just spending more. So, we felt like this might be a very timely conversation to be having. So today we're very excited. We are joined by Petra. She has spent the last year working with over 30 clients across Sweden, the Nordics, Europe, on things like comp strategy, workforce planning, and getting leadership aligned on reward. So she's basically here to share what she's seen kind of on the ground in these specific companies and with her experience. And for those of you that might have been to a few of our Ravio webinars events before, this looks slightly different to what we normally do. Normally, I think a lot of you might be used to having our webinar, so you're behind the screen. But today I can see a lot of you here, so thank you for joining. And we've done this on purpose because, yeah, today what we really want it to be is a real conversation. So if you do have specific questions for Petra as we're going along, feel free to pop your questions in the chat. We'll come to them if it makes sense as we're going along, or at the end. I'll definitely come to them. So, yeah, without further ado, Petra, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I am so excited to be here. And this is me. Uh, I run my own company. I've been working with HR for 25 years. Most of the time, actually, as chief HRO or people director and so forth. For the last years, I have transformed a bit into leading my own company and doing a lot of business strategy with my partners and work besties, the people you work with throughout your career that make you better yourself. And today I'm going to share some of my insights and some of my best tips and tricks, ideas for the Nordic. A lot of people are scared for working in the Nordic due to legislation, but I will show you how easy it is. And so let's join the ride and just go on. But we're going to start with a poll, aren't we, Danica? Because I would like to know what is your single biggest compensation challenge right now. My customers and clients have different angles, but sometimes they think the same. And is it budget pressure? Is it getting manager buy-in on the changes you're making with job levels and job architectures, and they are no longer allowed to set pay as they want? Is it the readiness? Is it AI and tech talent, or is it something else?
Amazing. So we can see pay transparency readiness being at the top, with all the rest of them being pretty even, I would say.
Okay, good. I don't see the answers from here, so I appreciate that you tell me because I'm blindsided on it from mine. Good. Then it is pay transparent. I got a question on that in a new meeting. She was like, Petra, how do we report this? Can I have a meeting? I got one today. So yeah, I know a lot of my customers have it on top as well. Thank you, everyone. So what will we cover then? Here is what we will cover over the next hour. We will start by busting a myth that causes real damage in organizations and then move through the mechanics of each Nordic country, what the data actually shows, the strategic investment question, a practical scoring framework, and finally, what good practice looks like in real life. And if you want to have the slides afterwards, they're quite wordy. I'm happy to share them. There are no secrets. So they are there for you if you listen in today. So then, This is what I want to start with because it reframes everything else. The single biggest obstacle I see to smart compensation strategies in the Nordic is not budget and it's not legal complexity. It's a deeply held misunderstanding of what the rules actually require. There is no law in Sweden that say you must receive a salary increase every year. That is true. And it is equally true in Denmark, Norway, and Finland. I have said this to rooms full of HR professionals, to senior managers, and to business leaders, and every time at least a few people look genuinely surprised by this. The Nordic model is rightly respected for its fairness and its strong employee protections. But one of the things it does not protect is an unconditional right to an annual pay rise. That is a cultural expectation, not a legal one. And confusing the two is costing organizations a great deal of money and strategic flexibility with limited budget. So, what does our framework here in Nordic actually say? There are 4 situations to understand. First, companies covered by collective agreement might often include a fixed percentage, but that percentage applies at company level. How it is distributed across individuals is usually a local discretion and decision. Second, and this is the important one, figureless agreements. In Sweden, especially many white-collar agreements contain no individual guarantee at all. The local conversation between manager and employee determines the outcome. This is an enormous flexibility that most organizations simply does not use. And what they do not use either is that you can negotiate with the union, they can disagree, then you agree to disagree on how you distribute the money and the company makes the decision. Third, local conversation. Even where a norm exists, the distribution is a local matter. Even if there is a number, say, hey, we need to give 2.3% this year, how you distribute can still be locally handled. And fourth, a lot of companies, and perhaps many of you work in companies with no collective agreement at all, then the individual employment contract is all that governs pay, no law, nothing else. And this is really a good moment for us to reflect about it, because that is really transforming stuff. One question I'm often asked is, if you stop using numerical grading and traditional performance reviews to drive pay decisions, what do you use instead? The answer is then objective, documented criteria tied to role value, not individual scores. And we will come to the value potential score later, which is a way of working in the Nordic framework, where you actually put the money on the role, not only on individual historical performance. But I will get back to that and how this framework and the legislation work together. The expectation gap. This is the tension at the heart of most salary conversations in Nordic organization. The law requires nothing. Employee expect a lot for the most of the time. Most employees under collective agreement generally believe their annual rise is guaranteed. I had a really interesting discussion with a French employee expert in a Swedish company a few years back. She was expecting, because we were signing a CBA, and she was like, now Petra, I can decide myself, this is going to be so much more salary. And it was like, no, you're already very well paid and the CBA will not move anyone's salary. And we had a lot of European employees with us at the time, and they were all so surprised and so shocked that it didn't give them a guaranteed super raise. They expected that. This cultural norm has become stronger than the legal reality, and this expectation gap creates 2 problems. One is that manager will give a 0 increase feels as though they have done something wrong, even when they have done nothing wrong. And second, employees who receive a 0 feel genuinely deceived, even when no promises were ever made. So the solution is not to remove the expectation. That is impossible. People do expect a pay raise, so do I. The solution is to replace the vague expectation with a clear conversation and structure. That is what we need to work with a lot. This matters now more than it did a few years back. First, broad increases are no longer affordable for very many organizations. The maths has simply changed. You cannot sustain across the board rises every year and remain competitive. I think many of you can resonate with that. Second, budgets are limited, which means every krona you spend on pay rise should be a deliberate investment, not an automatic distribution across the whole company. Third, IA and advanced tech skill command significant market premiums right now. I think you have noticed that. If you're not distributing your budget equally, if you are distributing your budget equally, you are almost certainly underinvesting in the roles that matter most and overspending on roles where market has not moved. Fourth, the pay transparency is coming, and it requires documented, objective justification for pay differences. Just giving everyone the same is not a strategy, and it feels right, like managers sometimes say, it's not a justification. I should also mention something that comes up a great deal at the moment. Companies that have gone through restructuring or downsizing and are trying to retain and motivate the people who remain, even if they're not yet super profitable. This is one of the hardest comp challenges there is. The instinct is often to offer pay rises to reassure survivors to stay, but the research is clear that pay alone does not address the anxiety and disengagement that follows restructuring. You need a different toolkit for that, and pay alone will not solve it. With that, I segue into section 2. One new region and 4 systems, because there are differences between our 4 countries, and I will dive into those. Pay is not set by law anywhere in the Nordics. Salaries are set by collective agreements or individual contracts. If you take anything with you today, that is what I really want you to bring and remember. Union density is high in the Nordic, higher than almost anywhere else in the developed world. This means employers who want to different pay needs to be able to explain themselves to unions, not only to the employees. Local flexibility exists in every system, though the degree varies considerably. Let's start with Sweden, and this is where I am the strongest myself, so bear with me, but I do have the rest in the other countries as well. We have this figureless agreement system, in particular for the white collars, not very much that exactly the same for the blue collars. There it can be much more fixed. But if you work for a white collar employer and are covered by agreements that do not specify a percentage increase, then you're in a quite good company with a lot of people. The framework sets working conditions, the local dialogue sets pay. If you have a startup in Sweden and you have a CPA and it's a tech company, this is probably what you have. Flexibility is big. Yeah. And most organizations do not use the opportunity. I hear someone talking. It's okay. Ask questions. I don't see the questions in your chat, by the way, but ask them if you like. Denmark is operating differently but arrives at a similar place. The collective agreement sets a minimum floor. It does not set a ceiling. Actual pay is negotiated at company level above the minimum. And in Sweden there is no ceiling either. You can pay as much as you like as long as it's equal. And more importantly, in Denmark, for salaried employees without fixed rates, individual evaluation is not optional. It is expected at least annually. The Danish system explicitly assumes that differentiation will happen. And this is not a system that resists performance-based pay. It is a system that was designed with it in mind. The key insight for a Danish organization is that you are not working against the grain when you differentiate. You're doing what the system assumed you would do. So do differentiate. Norway is structured through something they call the frontfag model. The frontfag principle is worth understanding properly. Industries most exposed to international competition negotiate first, and their outcome sets the norm for the whole Norwegian economy. It's actually quite similar to Sweden, where we have not something we call market. This anchors wage growth to what Norwegian employees can sustain against global competition. It's genuinely clever, the same for Sweden, and it doesn't really follow inflation, which sometimes our employees expect, but we will never set pay according to what inflation happens. What this means for the local organization is that the front flag outcome defines the budget, but the distribution within that budget is the local decision. Who receives more and who receives less is determined at company level in dialogue with the union representatives. One of the bases of documented criteria should be. And one nuance here compared to the others, Norwegian employees are not generally entitled to negotiate their own salary. We are in Sweden, for instance. So in each of these countries, you need to understand it well. It's a bit tricky, but it can be done in a quite flexible way. Finland has moved significantly in recent years, and the tech sector is a useful case study. The principle here is local first. Salary increases are negotiated at company level each year, not handed down centrally. As in Norway and Sweden a bit. And if no local agreement is reached, a fallback applies, which removes the paralysis risk. What I find most usual about the Finnish system is that differentiation is actually written into the agreements, not implied, not permitted, written in. The IT Service Collective Agreement that came into force in April 2025 explicitly states that paid development should reflect individual competence and performance. That also goes to Norway and Denmark, but if someone hasn't performed or if you can't afford it in Sweden, you don't need to pay them. And it's something that I want you to bring with you. So here's the summary. All 4 countries have space for differentiated pay, not as an expectation, as an intended design. The question is never, does the system allow us to differentiate? It does. The question is, do we have the structure to use it with responsibility, and can we actually use the job level framework we have, the salary bands, the expectations on role, the profitability in where our company is growing, what roles we want in investment? The answer is yes. You can really do that, and we're going to walk you through how to do it in a compliant way shortly. But first, I'm curious about a new small poll. Which country's system feels closest to how your organization operates today? Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, or we operate across multiple ways?
The poll isn't seeming to come up, so I would love to see in the chat. Would you be able to put in where what you would put? A, B, C, D, or E? I can see. Perfect. A big mix.
Yeah,
A
it's the
few
whole
E's.
alphabet.
Lovely. Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. And so thankful for all the interaction with you guys. Now I can see what pops up also. You are correct. A lot of companies do work across multiple, and I think the multiple is the most difficult sometimes. Good. Because now we're going to move into what Ravio says. I'm here. By the way, I am one of the early adopters of Ravio. Did you know that? I think I was the one of your first clients in Sweden came through me in my role as interim chief HRO because I just loved the idea of it. That's a few years back. Anyway, the data reality. I could tell you about what the Nordic model allows, and I have done that. But what I want to show you now is what it actually is happening, what the real numbers look like inside European organizations right now. I'm drawing on Ravio's European Compensation Report for this. And as you know, Ravio collects the real-time compensation data across European tech and AI roles. This is a survey that is really actual right now, and that is what I liked when I was chief HRO. I had this tech organization where people were constantly complaining about not having enough salary, and it was impossible for us to track it, and that is what I like. So 3 numbers, commit these to memory. 23%, that is the share of employees who received an in-role salary increase last year. It's not 50, not 70, and not or so. It's 23% of the employees. 5%, that is the median salary increase in European tech, and it has been flat for approximately 2 years. To me, that is quite connected, if I look at the companies I work with, to downsizing, to not having investment money, and that they need to slow down cost increases. plus 12%. That is the salary premium that AI and advanced tech roles command over comparable positions. These three numbers tells a story. Most employees get nothing, and the average for those who did get something has not moved. And the roles that are most strategically important have separated from the market in a way the standard compensation frameworks are not keeping up with. And here I see this weak spot that the Nordic market have, that believe that everyone should get those 5%. No, they shouldn't. Maybe actually 77% should get a zero. Hopefully not, of course. I like when people do get some, but this is what the market actually looks like. And let me stay on the 23% for a moment, because I think it deserves more attention than it usually gets. 3 in 4 employees went through a full review cycle, had a conversation with the manager, waited, perhaps had their expectations set by cultural norms about annual rises, and received nothing. The issue is not that 77% of employees did not get a rise. In many cases, that is the right outcome. The issue is how it happened. Perhaps no preparation, no context, no real explanation, no path forward, a lot of silence, and then number or no discussion. I think that has happened in quite many places. This is where I want to briefly address the question of non-cash levers, because when pay cannot move, something else has to. The levers that genuinely work are clarity about career progression, a job framework, meaningful autonomy in how work is done, recognition that feels specific rather than generic, and a genuine investment in development. And what employees see straight through is well-being budgets that are announced and never promoted, team building activities used as substitute for real conversation, and vague promises about future pay that never arrive on the timeline. The difference is honestly, employees are very good at telling the difference between a genuine investment in their future and distraction from a conversation nobody wants to have, because no manager is interested in saying, hey, you can't get anything this year. That is probably one of the worst manager discussions to have with your employee. But still, a lot of people needed to have that conversation previously. The median is flat, but as I said, the median conceals as much as it reveals. As a 5% median can mean 0 for the majority and 15% for a small group. And if you are distributing the median across all roles equally, you are most certainly underinvesting in the roles that matter most, because then they will get 15% somewhere else. I'm often asked how most companies work with actually defining their budget increase and how they track it through the year. The honest answer is most do not have a very sophisticated process on this. And the most common approach is that HR Finance sets a percentage of the total salary bill, often anchored to their plan and collective agreement norms, or what previous year was like. We usually do 3%, and this year it looks like 3.5, so we do 3.5 and we have 0.5 extra in case needed. That is what I'm used to. It is then allocated by division or function, and then every function gets the same. Every division gets the same. And what I see the best organization are doing is that they are separating this general budget from a strategic investment part and specifically allocate to areas where they need to invest more in their people. Because maybe one area should have 1% to 2% in total, and another area should have 10% in total, because they need to invest in those roles to keep those people. It could be business development areas, it could be incubation team, it could be tech teams that are far more important to the actual next level business than others are. And the 12% AI premium is not a prediction, it is the current market data for what these people are getting. And why is it happening? Low supply of verified AI competence, genuinely high in global demand, skills that are hard to access, hard to develop quickly, and very hard to replace. The problem for Nordic organization is that your salary surveys are annual and sometimes old, and the AI skill market moves in quarters. And by the time your benchmark is published, it is already stalled and old for machine learning engineering roles. Unions often have data themselves that they show, and they have it also annually in Sweden. And here is the uncomfortable truth. The people in those roles know the market value because they are approached all the time. They receive offers and they understand the benchmark. And together, while using something I called the value potential score, you can actually find a way to work around this in a compliant way, which is very, very fun to work with. And here comes the poll, because this one, of course, I understand is a bit sensitive, but I would love to know what percentage of your employees receive the pay increase this year. In Sweden, we usually do this in April. Less than 20, 20 to 40, 41 to 60, 61 to 90, or more than 90. Did we get any answers?
Yes, we did. So majority, I would say, is at the more than 90%. We have no one in that mid-range of C, 41 to 60% at the moment. That's voted there. And then the next one up is 61 to 90. So on the bottom end of things, or on the high end of things in this case. Mostly D's and E's.
Mostly these and these. And this is super exciting because this is not what your market data shows, right?
Exactly that.
Exactly that. People expect pay raise. So, who do you then invest in? This is the strategic super question at the heart of compensation planning, and it's the one that most HR framework avoid answering directly because it's so sensitive. And angry managers, and of course they want to give a pay raise to people. Okay, let me give you a scenario. You have a total pay increase budget of 2% for your organization this year. You have 3 employees in front of you. You have a senior machine learning engineer building the core AI product, specialist skill, very active on LinkedIn, meaning they are visible to recruiters. B, you have a finance analyst, a strong performer, mid-market role, solid, stable team member, everyone loves him. And then you have a customer support lead, excellent people skills, loved by the team, but the role is increasingly automated. How do you distribute 2% here? Most managers faced with these questions either split it equally, no decision made, just avoid it, or go with instinct. The machine learning engineer is probably undervalued. The customer support lead is probably heading for a difficult conversation. The finance analyst is in the middle. What we need is a framework for making that decision consistently, fairly, and in a way that can be explained. If you are more than 30 to 50 people, informal decisions compound in the pay structure that no one designed is quite common. And as soon as your company starts to grow over a certain level, you start to see unexplained pay gaps, retention problems in exactly the roles you cannot afford to lose, and pay equity issues that create legal exposure. And this means that when the senior machine learning engineer says, hey, I just got a new counter offer, then you increase that salary without having a real framework to explain why. That is one of the most common problems. Also now when we work with the Pay Transparency Directive, a lot of companies have taken senior, old historical decisions on roles that were extremely critical 2 or 3 years back, or individuals, and then the pay structure is very uneven. And I think that some of you are now nodding without looking at me because you know it. The problem with gut feel pay decisions is not that they feel wrong when the manager are making them, it's what they accumulate into over time. They are inconsistent, the same role, the same performance, 4 different managers, 4 different outcomes. They reward visibility and loyalty rather than future value of a role as well. And a lot of times we actually put a lot of money to historical performance and not what that person or that role is supposed to do in the future. Loudest voice and longest tenure tend to win. And they create pay inequity that compounds silently, and disproportionality disadvantaged women. We know that is why the pay transparency come in, which I love, by the way. I think it's great that is coming in because it demands a structure for everyone in a way that we really haven't had before. And it's not about removing the manager judgment in these conversations. It's about giving managers a structure with their judgment can be expressed consistently and documented properly. Especially the documentation is super important. And when you work in companies with younger employees, they put their salaries in spreadsheets and lists. And if you can't explain why there is a differentiation, you do have a bit of a problem. And now I still don't see your faces, but at least I have been working as chief HR who have managing those spreadsheet lists in the backbone, shared on Slack and voiced over by a young tech audience. There are 3 questions that I think every leader must be able to answer. First, which role are hardest to replace? Not who is most popular or who is most liked, but which capabilities would take 6 months or more to replace, and what would the business risk look like in that meantime? Second, which capabilities create the most future business value? Not which role exists today, which roles will matter most in 2 or 3 years. And are you paying for tomorrow's organization or are you paying for yesterday's? Third, where do you risk losing critical talent if you do not act? Not who is unhappy, who is genuinely under market, actively recruited by others, and genuinely irreplaceable. Does your current pay reflect that? These 3 questions are the foundation of everything we are about to cover now with the value potential score. And if you took these 3 questions to your management team and said, hey, we're going to have a workshop about these questions, I'm sure it would be quite an exciting hour. The value potential score model then. This is a practical framework I want you to take away today. It is designed to answer the 3 questions from the previous slide in a way that is structured, documented, defensible, and work with pay transparency and Nordic legal framework and unions. It's like this amazing gift, The value potential score is a point-based measure 0 to 100 that assesses a role's significance for creating future business value. And a few things I want to flag about it before we get into the criteria. It is forward-looking. It asks about future value, not historical performance. This matters because roles that were important last year may not be the ones you need to invest in next year. It's role level, it's not person level. The score is applied to the role, not to the individual. Individual variation within a role is a separate decision made afterwards. It is structured and documented. Every input can be written down and explained. That matters both internally for calibration and externally for union conversations and pay equity reviews. The value potential score is specifically designed for organizations that are moving away from numerical performance grading. And if you eliminate the performance review score, you still need to make pay decisions. And the value potential score gives you a role level foundation where you can still differentiate pay every year. Individual conversations about contribution and development still needs to happen, and you still probably need to differentiate. It's even legally required somewhere. But they are not. If you take away the numbers, they are no longer translated into a single number that mechanically drives pay outcome. And I know that some of you, because I got some questions before this session that were asking specifically about this. There are 5 criteria, and each is scored 1 to 5, weighted to total 100. Strategic impact. How central is this role to executing the business strategy today and in the next 2 to 3 years? Replaceability. How hard would it be to replace this person and how long would it take? Market scarcity. How competitive is the external talent market for this skill? Revenue proximity. How close is this role to the direct creation of revenue or product value? Future demand. How critical will this skill be in 2 to 3 years given the direction of the business? The weighting is something each organization calibrates to its own context. A scale up within AI production will weight future demand and market scarcity very heavily. A service business might weight replaceability and strategic impact most. The point is that the weightings are documented and applied consistently and puts in your framework what you need to drive your business. And it does require a rock solid business strategy as well. I've tried to do this in an organization without a business strategy. That doesn't work at all. It is connected. So what does the score tell you then? 80 to 100. These are your highest priority roles. Pay above market median, invest in competitive benefits, make expectations clear. Underinvesting here creates direct retention risk. And I think the ones that were having 15% salary increase in the Ravi report are probably, if you made a value potential score analysis of them in that group. 60 to 79, target market median, build career pathways and development investment for high performance in this segment. And if they're below 60, pay can sit in the lower part of the market range. Budget freed up for this from this segment can be reinvested above, or you can outsource it, or you can automate more. Another question I often hear is, what happens when someone reaches the top of their salary band then within these areas? And that is one of the most uncomfortable conversations in compensation. The answer is not to pretend it has not happened. The options are a genuine role change that puts them in a new band, a recognition payment that is not structural pay, an investment in development or benefit that has real value, or an honest conversation about the limits of the current role and what the path forward looks like. What does not work is quietly avoiding the question until the person gets an offer elsewhere. Top of band conversations should be planned and not reactive. And one of my very, very close relatives had this conversation with his manager this spring. And he came home to me and said, Petra, I didn't receive much this year because I was already in top of the band in my team. So that was great. I'm a bit overpaid, almost. And then he was happy anyway. But then there is a culture in a global organization that people knows this. And senior employees often does. But then the conversation has been clear. And of course, he has also been very well supported by me in how to think. We have those dinner conversations. For him, need to talk about pay over dinner. So, why do AI roles almost always score in the top band right now? It's a strategic impact. AI is increasingly core to product, not only to it. And machine learning engineers are building what the business sells. Replaceability. The global supply of verified AI competence is genuinely constrained. A replacement search commonly takes 6 to 9 months. Market scarcity, plus 12% market premium for pay increases. The data is clear. Revenue proximity. AI talent typically sits very close to the product and therefore close to value creation. Future demand. Every credible forecast points to continued and growing demand on this competence. This is not peaking, it is compounding. And if you run the value potential score on a senior machine learning engineer role and it does not come out in the top band, then maybe you should also consider what you're working with and are they doing the right thing in organization? And is the business strategy solid enough? Because to me, this is the robust discussion you need to have.
And Petra, there was a question just on that in the chat. There was a question saying, what would you do in a situation where you have exceptional talent in a role that still does not score high in value potential score, but you cannot promote them in another role?
If you still really want to keep this person, then it could be a one-off bonus that you have for exceptional talent, that you have this exceptional talent. And back again, then we go back to the pay transparency directive. How can I give just Anna, say Anna in Sweden, an extra off-site bonus? Well, then you need to have some kind of talent program for that. But you cannot overpay them within their salary band. And you should definitely put them on the succession plan list for any other role that is the next role coming up. But sometimes you also need to understand, and this is a tough conversation with the managers, I think. Just because this person is a very cool Ferrari, you cannot afford anything but a Volvo. So you need to pay the leasing fee for a Volvo or for a Ford or whatever it is. Because, well, it might be a Ferrari and that Ferrari can be paid as a Ferrari somewhere else. And be happy that you have that person with you for the moment. But you cannot still increase pay that much because the inconsistency will come and at some point you cannot justify it anymore. So those are the really hard conversations you still need to have. Or you need to find a way to move that person into some different role where he and she can earn the money she deserves. But every role should pay for itself. You cannot overpay. You shouldn't overpay if you buy products on the market, and you should sometimes see competence equal as product. Does that make sense to you? hopefully.
Yes, she said thank you.
I don't see it. If, because I see it, I lose my slides, and that's a bit scary when you try to present. Uh, the Is it this comparable? Yes, it is. Because we can set a lot of our own rules. Um, in all four Nordic countries, differentiated pay is not just permitted, it is design intent, and the figureless agreements exist precisely because the system assumed local individual differentiation would happen. But we have always, when we talked about it, spoken about historical performance and to review what someone did last year. But of course, you can also say, hey, we are going to pay a little bit extra for the roles and the organizational design and the business impact. And this is also, to be honest with you out there, my dear HR colleagues, where HR moved from being operational to being strategical. These are the kind of conversations that take you into the board room and take you into the management team by heart. I run an HR mentor program, and one of the most difficult obstacles my HR mentees have is like, how do I make myself useful in the management team, and how do I get so that I can present into the boards, and what is it that they want to see? And this is exactly what the board want to see. Like, how can we distribute money and budget and funding and invest in the future of our business? This is what will take you there. Did it pop another question?
No, I think Petra, you might have missed a slide. When the question came, there was a slide before as well.
Were there? Ah, I'm sorry. Then I go back to it.
That's okay.
Sorry. The value potential score tells you where to position a role, and market data tells you what the position means in actual number. And without real-time data, you can know that the role should be above median, but you do not what above median means in salary terms for a machine learning engineer, for instance, in Stockholm. And local Nordic surveys lag the market by 12 to 18 months for tech and AI roles, and Ravi will support that. So I think it would be super interesting for yourself. And you can do this, take a breakout and do the value potential score for just a small group within your company and say, we want to do it for these 14 roles because we think they will score differently. And then you can see also how have their salary increases been distributed for the last year. Because if you look into that, you will get a glimpse of what it looks like and how we segment it towards the market. And I think that could be a very, very useful workday for yourself and a few managers and perhaps your CFO to understand your own compensation landscape. That is what I recommend you all to go home and do, to understand where you are. That was a slide I almost missed. And an honest question to you guys, and a small poll. Can I have a poll here? Do your organization currently have a formal method for deciding which roles to prioritize when the comp budget is set? Yes, partially, no, we're building one.
We have the majority. No, it's changing slightly. More or less, we have partially and no. We have no yeses at the moment. And then we have one, we're building one at the moment. So mainly partially we have some structure.
Great, then you're on your way, and that's brilliant. Thanks. Okay. What good looks like in practice and the things that most often go wrong. I want to spend the last section on what goes wrong, because even organizations with good intentions and reasonable frameworks make predictable mistakes. And if I can help you avoid the most common ones, this session will have been worth your time. The first and most common failure is that managers setting pay is in some kind of isolation. And when a manager decides pay without a shared framework and without a review step, several things happen. Decisions reflect personal relationships rather than strategic value. Inconsistency across team creates unexplained pay gaps. The manager carries all the risk when challenged, and gender pay gaps compound silently over time. The fix is structural, not cultural. And managers propose HR review against a shared framework, and both parties sign off. Calibration panels surface inconsistencies before decisions are communicated. And the calibration plan is also where you follow up on your compensation budget through the year, not just at the end of the review cycle, quarterly check-ins on what has been awarded, what attrition has occurred, and whether your investment decisions are showing up in the right outcomes. The companies that does this well are not waiting for an exit interview to find if they got it wrong. And to me, this is about working with KPI dashboard. Yet again, to my mentees, I push them so hard. You need to own your data, run your data, and use your data to reflect the business decisions. The bigger the company, the more you need to look into data. But also a company with 100 employees will find a hidden truth in the figures where they were just guessing. I love data, by the way. The second failure, the once-a-year surprise. An employee has no signal throughout the year that their outcome will be zero. In November, they sit down with a manager or wherever it might be and receive nothing. No context, no explanation. And you can avoid that, when you can, and it doesn't even need to be zero. It can be 1% can sometimes be worse than 0% if it's not explained properly. And a mid-year conversation that set context. Budget are tighter this year, is what our criteria are, changes in our dynamic and so on. I have worked with 2 clients this year. One of them actually said that if you cannot show the value of how you integrate AI in your toolbox and use it to be more effective so that you can actually be more profitable towards our customer, you will not get an increased pay next year. That is one of my customers. Another customer put together a framework saying, if you want to be one of our top performers and make more money, it's a consultant agency, you need to showcase how you actually create value through giving your colleagues more work and how you create more assignments within the customer you're having. And if you don't do that, you're not a senior with us and your pay raise will be lower. They were super clear and super structured, and the unions agreed. That is actually very important. The third failure is that you don't have any reliable market data for emerging roles. And local Nordic salary surveys are published annually, as I said, and they don't have very much market data for the new roles that are coming in. Also, the social media roles are super important to cover and be on track with. Some of you are Swedish, and I've been working a bit with Kaja Cosmetic, for instance, to say that social content manager is not a strategic important person there would be to lie. And the people in these roles know they receive offers. They see the Ravio reports perhaps or other equal reports. And if your internal framework is pricing them at a Nordic median that is old, they know that they are underpaid, even if you don't think that you are. For rapid growth areas, every 6 months is not excessive, and use external data when you talk to unions and so forth, because it might be that you actually need to invest a little bit more often and frequently than you previously thought you needed, just to stay competitive. And we cannot stop talking about this for a whole hour without talking about the European Union Pay Transparency Directive. It's not a distant concern, and member states were required to transpose the directive into national law by June 26. It's paused in a lot of countries, and I think that is a little bit due to the reporting issues, like what should we report. But you still need to work on it, and you need to be able to justify pay differences between employees during doing comparable work. And I think you need to be ahead of legislation, because to my gut feeling right now is that the people looking for jobs, they are very much interested in this, and they are definitely asking the questions. And my own experience as a senior HR nerd, räv as we call us in Sweden, a fox, I think it's an excellent way of saying, hey, we have this legislation, so I need extra funding to do a project. And then you transform it into this exciting business project. And you can fool your managers a bit. I shouldn't talk about that, but that is what I did with GDPR and other stuff that came in. I took the opportunity to build something that was also business relevant, because you need to make a change. And that's a good thing, and very fun to work with, I have to admit that. So, what does good look like then? 5 features, and almost no organization has all 5. Most have 2 or 3. The goal is not perfection, but it is progress. A structured framework for role prioritization, the VPS or something equivalent, applied consistently, reviewed annually at least. A European benchmark data for tech and AI roles is specifically, not just local, real-time role specific for those roles that are moving very fast. Calibration before communication. No pay decision is communicated until HR has reviewed it against the framework and the data. I think many of us struggle with that on a daily basis. Year-round pay dialogue. Development conversation happen throughout the year. Pay is the conclusion, not the introduction. Transparent criteria. Employees know what the criteria are, and they know how they can do their career progression. They know when they have hit the ceiling in the salary band, and they know that they understand that they need a new job to get a higher salary. And the unions understand the framework, and it can be explained and defended, and unions often like them as well, believe it or not. I once did a negotiation for 2,000 blue-collar employees where we set a framework in place that if they didn't learn new stuff, they wouldn't get a salary increase. They could be zeroed out. And the unions were amazed and thrilled about it because they love this company and they wanted the company to grow and develop, and they wanted the blue collars to understand that they were important for the growth of the company. Had nothing to do with AI, but still we managed to put in place what good actually looked like. And we reinvested a lot of money in the employees because they were so happy that the sick leave went down, the turnover went down, engagement score skyrocketed because we invested in their growth. So you can really do the differentiation for all kinds of roles. There are 3 things I want you to take away today. The Nordic model enables differentiated pay in all 4 countries. IA and tech talent need a separate lens, and structure is what makes the difference. This is what I would like to share with you. And now I come to one final slide. I want you to take something with you that you think a bit differently about and take differently. And if you like to share it, I'm very happy for you to put it in the chat, and we will soon segue into the questions if there are any for us today.
Amazing. Thanks, Petra. Yes, feel free to pop any of these reflections in the chat as well. But there was a couple of questions as we were going along, and please feel free to pop any more questions within that. And Tobias asked a question about with the examples of you were talking about when speaking to managers. So would these examples not tend to reward extroverts who are comfortable presenting and pushing back rather than introverts?
Oh, please, sorry, I was reading at the same time, which is a
That's
very,
okay.
very big mistake. Take it once again. I listen
One more
again.
time, one more time.
Uh-huh.
I think this is when you were speaking about when speaking to managers about reward decisions. And Tobias asked, would these examples not tend to reward extroverts who are comfortable presenting and pushing back? Oh, thank you for clarifying, Tobias. He said, for example, consultants who can prove how they use AI to improve business goals.
Yeah, that's just you. I've done this. Put SMART goals on people. I love the SMART framework. Say this is what you asked me, and this is what I delivered. But still, it needs to be within the role band level, and the role itself can be evaluated. Like in this role, we need to invest 10% this year in salary increase because the market inflation on the roles is this high. Otherwise, we will lose these people. And on these roles, we will put 2%. And now I put it a little bit to the extreme, and I know that, but that is because I want you to take it a little bit like, oh, can you do it like this? And yes, you can do it like this. In most companies, this will be a very, very tough culture shift. Maybe it works for Tesla. That is how they operate. And maybe there are companies that have this super strong culture. For a lot of companies, it needs to be balanced off, I would say. I also saw a question here. Couldn't you say that 2% are just inflation? Yes, you could. But if your profit in the company is minus 5%, then you perhaps can't keep up with inflation. And yes, you might lose some talent on it, but maybe you still need to use those percentage that you can pay in a tough year to those who really make an impact on the next level.
Fantastic. We've got a couple minutes left. Did anybody have any other questions that they would like to ask either in the chat, or feel free to pop your hand up or come off mute and ask a question as well?
Mm, yeah. And if you are curious, there are two ways to take this further. I think you should all explore Ravi's benchmark platform. And it's fun. I work with a lot of companies actually, but Ravi is one of those that I was there from the beginning. I like your platform, and it's easy to add in into any HRI system. And if you would like to have an 1 hour session with me and my team, a free hour just to discuss, I'm open for that. Can make myself available. Not before summer though, because it's crazy much. But in August, September, if you would like to sit down and have a chat with me, like Petra, what could we do? Please let me know. And I have this fun picture of me and my partner Jenny here. This is how fun it is to work with Pay when you work with us. And it's not just us. We have a network of senior partners, as I said before, the ones that I used to work with. And also the Ravi team is excellent to work with.
Thank you so much, Petra. And Tobias actually had one more question in the chat. We've got
Mm,
a couple more
mm.
minutes. And he asked, would it be possible to get a couple of examples or more information on the topics of how to talk about salary throughout the year and not once a year? I'm assuming that means. As in, how do you recommend advertising managers to talk about it?
Uh, I prefer performance framework or goal framework, I would say, that are quarterly or 3 times a year. And then you can also talk about it and talk about it like how much business value do we make in our area? How much money do we make? So that you always link your pay is directly linked to the business and the profit. Uh, my worst case scenario is that you have a very profitable business with a private owner that is very sneaky and wants to keep the money for himself and not share it. Those are the most difficult, but not telling anyone that that they cannot have any increases because the business is not growing. I think you can actually put it in. I don't have any good framework to show right now, but if you book a meeting with me, I'm sure we can discuss it.
Amazing. Fantastic. Is there another one? Yes, everyone saying a thank you to you, Petra. And yeah, thank
Mm.
you and all of you for joining as well. As Petra mentioned, we'll follow up with recording the slides and with any links that you might need as well. But please let us know if there's anything that we can do to help. But thank you all for joining us and hopefully see you on the next one.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.